The evidence would have to be quite overwhelming and demonstrable, and such that it would generate bipartisan support for the idea that it renders the president unfit for office. Now, many of us do think the president's unfit for office, but unless that's a bipartisan conclusion, an impeachment would be doomed to failure. I continue to think that a failed impeachment is not in the national interest.
Adam Schiff talking on another network, as you see, a few minutes ago about impeachment. This is the Mueller report. 2 volumes, 448 pages. We spent much of the day digesting all of that. Let's bring in our panel early. Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume joins us. Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist. Mo Elleithee, executive director of the Georgetown Institute of Politics. And Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics co-founder and president. Brit, you've been kind of absorbing all of this today. You heard the interviews earlier. Your thoughts on this day and what stands out?
Well, it's interesting to hear what Adam Schiff said about impeachment. I think he is entirely right about that. He's not right about everything, but I think he's right about that. That does not mean, however, that they're not going to take this obstruction of justice matter, the Democrats, and beat Trump over the head with it to the extent that they can. And there is a legal argument that you can already hear being outlined that goes this way. It says the only reason that Mueller did not find obstruction of justice is because he was bound by Justice Department policy not to charge a sitting president, and therefore he could not, in fairness, he couldn't make an accusation without delivering an indictment, and because he couldn't indict, he didn't do it. And the implication of that is, of course, that Trump is indeed guilty of obstruction of justice, and we're going to be hearing about that for some time now. I think that's where this is now going. I think collusion is dead as a doornail.
Yeah, Jerry Nadler, Molly, earlier today, other Democrats saying that the Attorney General's preface to all of this coming out was essentially him protecting the president. Take a listen.
Attorney General Barr appears to have shown an unsettling willingness to undermine his own department in order to protect President Trump.
The thought that Bill Barr, at age 69, his second tour as Attorney General, would do anything to tarnish his own image or reputation is completely ridiculous.
Thoughts?
Yeah, Bill Barr, who was George H.W. Bush's Attorney General and is coming back for his second tour, gave a press conference where he explained, again, the summary conclusions of the special counsel report. He has an obligation to protect the FBI and the Department of Justice, which he oversees. They have been hurt tremendously by this story, where they participated in this Russia collusion hoax that kind of roiled the country for several years. They had all these powers that were going against a political campaign. They behaved in inappropriate manners, starting the campaign against the Trump, or starting the investigation against the Trump campaign, and selectively leaking information to damage the president. I think he cares greatly about restoring the trust and credibility of the FBI and Department of Justice. To do that will require holding some people accountable. It also requires getting the special counsel report completed and wrapped up. And I think he did a remarkably good job of just laying out the facts. He's also let us know, though, that a reckoning is coming for the people who participated in this and who destroyed the trust that Americans have in the FBI and Department of Justice.
You know, politically, Mo, it seems like the signals you're getting from Democratic leadership is this may not be worth going down the impeachment road.
I mean, I think anybody would tell you that impeachment, like, that's got to be rock solid. I mean, I think Adam Schiff was right. If you don't, if you shoot for the bear and miss, right, you're in trouble, as Republicans found out when they tried to impeach, or when they impeached but failed to convict President Clinton back in the 90s. But having said that, I think Britt's right. I think you are going to hear them continue to talk about some of these issues, particularly as they pertain to obstruction. Because, look, I walked into the day not knowing what to expect, thinking this may end up kind of fizzling and we all kind of retreat to our partisan corners. Now, yes, we've all retreated to our partisan corners, but I did see some real interesting things on the obstruction issue. When Mueller says specifically, we would have exonerated if we could, and we didn't. And then when he said, and I think the direct quote was, the evidence does indicate that a thorough FBI investigation would uncover facts about the campaign and the president personally that the president could have understood to be crimes or that would give rise to personal and political concerns. He is pointing out that obstruction could be real I can't indict him. Congress, you may want to look at this, and he puts in the report a strong rationale for Congress to look at it.
Congress can't indict him.
So two things. One is there are embarrassing parts of this. There are things that were said by the White House that this report says were not true at the time,
right.
That the president said that were not true. It says that he told people to do things, they didn't do them, and that's one of the things that prevented them from going forward with obstruction. But overall, do you take this as a net positive for the president?
Sure. I mean, I think it's important to try, when we're stuck in one of these media frenzies, to step back and try and take the long view. How is this going to be looked at 6 days from now, 6 months from now, 6 years from now? And after all the hyperventilating is done, and no matter what Democrats end up doing beyond this, the bottom line, the headline, is whether you like Trump or not, it is no collusion and no obstruction. As a legal matter, those issues are both dead. They're not as a political matter, and that depends on what the Democrats decide to do next.
Britt?
Well, I would just say that any time anybody starts in on Trump on obstruction of justice, people will have the opportunity to look at what these people said about collusion. And if they are among the pack of people, and it's a considerable pack, who banged on that drum for 2 years, which turned out to be they drilled down that hole and it turned out to be a dry hole, I'm not sure how much credibility they'll have, but they will certainly try. You can imagine Jerry Nadler, I mean, he might not like hearing from Adam Schiff or from the majority leader Steny Hoyer that impeachment is not a great idea, and he was a little restrained about it today. But look, that's the only remedy they would have if they wanted to try to convict Donald Trump of obstruction of justice, and they're certainly going to try to do that in the court of public opinion. Whether they go forward with it in the Congress in an impeachment proceeding remains to be seen.
Yeah, Molly,
we all have our doubts.
The thing that I guess a lot of people look at is there really going to be an investigation to the start of this thing? Is there really going to be people that you think should be held accountable for the beginning of this investigation? Because a lot of times it goes into the ether and people just move on.
The country was basically held hostage by a collusion theory, a theory that the President of the United States was a foreign agent. This undermined the administration of our government. It totally sidelined the Department of Justice. It hampered our ability to do foreign policy. It was a very negative thing. There needs to be accountability. We're being given indications that there will be accountability for this, but it's really important that after the American people tolerated this investigation because they were told there was reason to believe that the president was a traitor. The idea that we're going to just quickly move on from this, like, oh, okay, I guess it was our bad, there was no collusion, but now we're going to try and go on obstruction, is patently absurd.
Right.
And people do need to be held accountable
for
how this started.
But are you concerned, it's pretty detailed in the contacts that the Russians had and their attempts and their contacts with, I'm just saying, are you concerned with the level of activity that the Russians took to try to interfere with the 2016 election?
What I'm mostly concerned about with this report is that it doesn't include all of the activity. We know there was a campaign that worked with Russians to interfere in the election. That was the Hillary Clinton campaign that secretly bought this information operation. According to the author of that dossier, he used Kremlin sources. There's nothing in the document about this. So I actually wish that we had seen more about Russia's efforts, because we don't have any information about the actual campaign.
You wonder what's going to be in the Inspector General's report, which comes out at the end of May, beginning of June. Last word.
Look, I have a problem with people who say that this was a big fraud or a waste of time. At the end of the day, this investigation pointed to specific cases of Russian interference that we should all be upset about. And it is said that the Trump campaign knew about it. Maybe they didn't coordinate the activity with them, but they knew about it in real time. This is an investigation that resulted in dozens of indictments and some convictions and some guilty pleas from some people who did some really bad things. Does it connect directly to the President of the United States? Not necessarily on the coordination aspect.
Well, no,
but
definitely not on the coordination. I mean, that's where it is. When you say not necessarily, I kept on reading this line to Tom Perez. No, there's no established coordination, period. It's not like a level of criminal activity. It's no.
He says no criminal conspiracy, but he says that there was some contact between them that they were aware. Now, put that aside, but hold on.
The investigation did not establish that the Trump campaign coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities.
That's why I am being very specific by saying there was contact and that they knew about the activity even if they didn't coordinate it. And the obstruction question, he points very strongly to the fact that there could be something there even if he couldn't indict.
It's up to Congress. You guys are going to come back. We have another panel coming up. News breaking moments ago from the Justice Department. The appointment of a special counsel.
The special counsel, Robert Mueller, has impaneled a grand jury and is already issuing subpoenas.
We didn't win because of Russia. We won because of you.
Breaking right now about who might turn themselves in this morning.
Former campaign manager Paul Manafort and a business associate of his, Rick Gates.
No, I'm not. And what has been shown is no collusion.
Did Mr. Mueller take appropriate action in this case?
Yes, he did.
Have you seen good cause to fire Special Counsel Mueller?
No. No, I'm not.
Today, the special counsel, Robert Mueller, indicted 13 Russian nationals, 3 Russian companies.
There's no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity.
The special counsel is recommending no jail time for Flynn.
The FBI raided the Florida home of longtime Trump advisor Roger Stone.
Mr. Manafort was not convicted for anything to do with Russian collusion.
Robert Mueller's report has officially been submitted to the Attorney General.
They found no collusion whatsoever with Russia. This was an attempted coup. This was an attempted takedown of a president.
The president states that this report is a complete and total exoneration. Who's factually accurate?
As I say, it's hard to have that discussion without the contents of the report, isn't it? And that's why I'm suggesting that we wait until the report is out.
And the wait is over, kinda. Couple hours anyway. Let's bring in our panel to discuss everything that we've been through over the last 22 months. Former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under George W. Bush, Tom Dupree is here. Former CIA analyst Buck Sexton is also here on our panel, and former federal prosecutor Francie Hakes is here. Let's start with you, if we can, Francie. What we can expect today when William Barr comes to the podium, when he comes out. How much are we going to get his opinion, and how much are we going to get a tutorial on what we're about to get?
Well, Brian, I think we're going to get a tutorial. I don't think Bill Barr is going to inject his opinion in this at all, in spite of what the Democrats say. I think he's going to be very careful about being a neutral arbiter, kind of like a judge here. He's going to just describe the facts. He's going to describe the facts in the report that support the conclusions that he's already summarized for us, and I suspect there will be something in it for everyone to love and something for everyone to hate.
Buck, you have said this is a reminder of the media getting it wrong for the last 2 years. Do you think the media will realize, or has realized that, and will make it right or apologize?
I'm quite sure that the media is not going to apologize, and in fact, I think that what you'll see today, Ainsley, is a lot of people doubling down. There was certainly a bit of humiliation that was doled out to them when we knew that there would be no charges either on obstruction or on collusion, conspiracy, once that came out. But now you're going to see a lot of media outlets that are desperate to find something in this report to justify the insanity that they've been reporting on for 2 years. So they're going to work very hard at a kind of special interpretive analysis here to say, well, there weren't charges, but look at this thing. And they're also going to dig deep into the redactions and suggest that that's where the real collusion happened, or that that's where you'll find. It's all nonsense, and it's all politics for them. And speaking of politics, the Democrats are going to try to use obstruction. There will be some, I don't know if the whole party will go in this direction, to create a narrative that there needs to be at least investigations going toward, or hearings going toward, impeachment based on the obstruction evidence but not charges that will be in this report. I think that's pretty likely.
Buck, you're talking about moving goalposts. Let's bring in Tom, because you served inside the Justice Department. And talk about the task for William Barr today as we get ready for his news conference and for him to lay out this redacted report. It seems like Democrats now are all focused. It was a blow to them, the Democrats, just a few weeks ago when the Attorney General came out and said there was no collusion, and that he and Rod Rosenstein, who's been a Trump critic, determined that after looking at all this, that there was no obstruction. So now they want to focus on redactions. Talk about that.
Yes, and look, I think as far as the Attorney General's news conference this morning, he appreciates that the time for spin is over, because this report is going to be in the public domain within a matter of hours. I think we're going to get a very quintessential Bill Barr, just the facts, ma'am approach. As far as the battle over redactions, I think today's really marks the starting gun for what will likely be a months-long slog, line by line, through the Mueller report. Because we know the Democrats, since they don't have the ammunition they want to support the collusion theory, have to find a new line of attack. And I suspect that that new line of attack is going to be that the Attorney General is engaged in a cover-up by redacting material. And so we are going to see a line-by-line battle through the Mueller report that may well play out in the courts concerning whether Barr properly or improperly redacted various pieces of it.
Francie, we know the things that the Trump administration didn't look good for them during this process. Number one, the Trump Tower meeting came to light. Number two, we find out about the Moscow Tower. The negotiations were going on, according to Michael Cohen, and not denied, into the fall of 2016. Rudy Giuliani got that out already into the public domain and took some heat for it. Do you expect to hear anything that we don't know about a Trump Tower meeting 2 or something like that? Or do you think the public's already been braced for those controversial things?
Well, Brian, I do think there may be things in it that represent the Russians reaching out to members of the Trump campaign and the Trump campaign rebuffing them. I think we may see that. And I just want to remind your audience, having a meeting with Russians is not illegal. It's not collusion, it isn't a conspiracy, it isn't colluding to throw the election, nor is doing business in Moscow. Now, whether or not everyone told the truth about those meetings or the subject of those meetings is another matter, but as long as they told the truth to the special counsel, then no one committed a crime in engaging in any of that conduct.
Tom, what do you make of the timing here? I always like to look at that. It's just always interesting. They're releasing this on a Thursday. We'll be talking about it today and tomorrow, well, as we enter into a holiday weekend.
You know, it is interesting, and I suspect it may not be entirely coincidental, but at the same time, look, the fact is that this is not a report that is immediately going to disappear into the dustbin of history. This is something that people are going to be focused on. They're going to be debating it. There are 400 pages in it, so there is going to be a lot to digest. And look, the fact is, I think there is going to be something for everyone in this. The Democrats are going to cherry pick certain things that don't make the president look good, and they're going to be beating him up for the next few weeks, or at least trying to do it, since they don't have the fundamental finding of collusion.
Right. And the Warren Commission, some people have said, is an apt example, because even though the conclusions say Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, people keep reading it and having questions, and they make movies and they write books on it. I don't know if we're going to have that type of
we have to
language
focus
with this.
on accountability for the spying, Brian. We have to make sure that the true thing, the real bad stuff that happened, finally has someone look at it here, which is that there was spying on a presidential campaign. We know that. It's a fact.
That's next.
Let's see if they can justify it.
They'll be looking at it. All right, good points by all. Tom will be hosting Outnumbered, by the way, today, noon Eastern. Don't miss that.